year is 1812, and Napoleon Bonaparte, who at that time considered himself to be the emperor of all of Europe, decided to wage war against Russia. And he wanted to stop Alexander I from continuing the amount of economy he had with the Brits, thereby destabilizing their economy. And what he did was to march what was known as the Grand Armée, which is the Grand Army, which at that time was the largest contingent of soldiers ever seen in history. 685,000 soldiers, and they marched across the river into Russia. And as they made their way across, they indulged in their usual beating up of the Cossacks and defeating the Russians, and the Russians slowly retreated towards the east. The French thought they were winning and they kept going at them. But the Napoleon army had this very interesting tactic of sustaining themselves based on the food supplies and the rations that they would find in the villages and cities that they had ransacked. And this is how they had worked all throughout the Napoleonic Wars. But in Russia, what the crafty Russians did was they used to, as they leave the city, they would burn the city and the villages behind them, thereby leaving nothing behind for the Napoleon army. Eventually, they met just outside Moscow, around 80 kilometers in front of Moscow, and there ensued a bloody battle wherein one day close to 70,000 people were killed. Now, in the end, yes, the French did win by a narrow margin, but then when they marched forward and reached Moscow, they realized that the Russians had burnt Moscow as well. There was nobody in Moscow, there was nothing left, and the Russians had taken everything along with them. So basically, the French soldiers now had no food. The horses had no food, and then it was September or almost August end, and that's when the dreaded Russian winter set in. So because of that, it was really cold, there was no food, so they started the long journey back. And on the way, they couldn't handle the cold, they couldn't handle the starvation. There was also an outbreak of typhoid, and many men died. It is estimated that of the 680,000 who started off, only around 20,000 made it back. Yes, that was a huge loss for Napoleon, and he never did recuperate from it at all. Just a year later, the entire part of Europe rebelled against him, and soon he realized he was exiled to Elba. Now, the Russians call this as the Great Patriotic Victory, or the 1812 victory. And around 70 years later, the great Russian composer Tchaikovsky decided to actually come up with a tune to kind of bring about a sense of jubilation about this victory, which for sure we know has changed the course of history. And that's the title of the song that we're going to play today, 1812 Overture. Now, it's a very short, I'm going to play the end of it. You will most probably recognize this tune. It's played in lots of movies as motifs and also in cartoons. But there's a very interesting instrument, I would like to call, which makes a particular sound effect in the song. So whenever that sound effect comes, I'm going to point out, and you have to tell me what instrument does Tchaikovsky use to make that sound effect. 1812 Overture. 1812 Overture. So in the comments below, tell me what instrument made that percussive noise in the song.